don't be discouraged if you don't get work in the first 3-4 months/years. For me, I was a PA, and that's how I funded living in New York City and still trying to be a photographer. I was, first one there, last one to leave all the time on all these big shoots and got paid nothing. Just finding a way to fund your passion and keep with it.
Dan Prakopcyk is a LA-based photographer by way of New Jersey. He's worked with g-eazy, toured with John Mayer, and his work has been featured in Complex, Rolling Stone, and Spin magazines. And he's my cousin. Can you believe? This is the thing. That's not going to sound weird to you until you hear the story, because we met about a month ago and we didn't know we were cousins. And then it just, I don't want to ruin it. It's a really short story, but we cover it in the beginning of the podcast. Super serendipitous, super strange. But it turns out that we're blood, that we're cousins, which is cool because it's always great to have family close by. On the podcast, we talk about how he worked his way up as a PA, struggling in New York City, landing his first gigs, and how to make it as a freelance photographer. We answer some big questions like, when should you work for free? When should you lower your rate or increase your rate? And how do you find clients when there's no one knocking at your door? Huge questions for freelancers, photographers, anybody in a creative field. Speaking of questions, do you have a question for my guest or myself? Do you have a question about your own creative journey? If so, record a short audio or video clip. Keep it under 2 minutes. Send it to hello@mattdiavella.com and I'll get you on the podcast. It's been amazing to hear from you over these past couple months, and I want to continue to place those questions where appropriate when it's going to help my guest and I really tackle a subject in a different way. So again, send in those questions to hello@mattdiavella.com and we'll get you on the podcast. Last thing, I say this on every podcast, but it has actually really helped and it's been working. If you leave a review on iTunes, what I've been seeing is it's been increasing our visibility. So the podcast has been within the top 200 business on iTunes, which is huge. And that's been for the past couple weeks now. As these reviews and ratings have come in, that's increased our visibility. It means that more people are downloading the podcast, more people are finding it, which is amazing because it means that I might be able to keep doing this. I've been doing it for over a year now, and it has been challenging at times to work for this long and put this many hours into both the video and the audio side of this podcast without making any money off of it, but I see where it's going. I have a vision for this podcast and for the content that I'm creating, and I'm just inspired by the reaction and the support that you guys have given me. So thank you so much for your support in the past. Thank you so much for your continued support. I really appreciate it. You are really what makes this whole thing possible. So with all that said, what do you say? We get to my cousin. This is Dan. You're listening to The Ground Up Show, a podcast that inspires creatives to make meaningful content and pursue their passions. My name's Matt Diavella, and I'm a filmmaker best known for the Netflix documentary Minimalism. And I'm sitting down with creators to talk about their process, the lessons they've learned, and how to make an impact.
Dude, I actually still can't believe that we found out that we're cousins. It's the craziest shit in the world.
Isn't it so fucking crazy?
Dude, it was so... Because my mom, she...
Actually, you know what? Let's... I think that's like the best place to start.
Yeah, let's do it.
Because that's... what happened was... So our mutual friend connected us and said, hey, you guys should meet. I think you'd get along. So we got lunch last month. And then it was like a couple weeks later, I got a text from you.
Yeah, it was... It was really funny. I was on a podcast before and my mom was listening to it and she's like, oh, you sounded really great. And I'm like, oh, I met this other guy who's from North Hunterdon. He's like around Voorhees. He went to Voorhees High School and we graduated in the same year and all this kind of stuff. And she's like, what's his name? Oh, I'm like, Matt DeVella. She's like, what? She's like, DeVella, what's your dad's name again? Your dad's name?
Mark.
He's like, yeah. Like Mark DeVella? Like I went to high school with Mark DeVella. I'm like, what? And she's like, you have to ask him right now. Like, who? I'm like, why? You're like freaking out. He's like, he's your cousin. I'm like, no way.
What?
She's like, and then I texted you, and it was like, yeah, your grandfather and my grandma would go to church every Sunday, kind of thing, which is hilarious.
It's so
and
crazy.
Like, the Catanzarettis are like, it's just so funny. So
I couldn't believe it. Yeah, because then I'm like texting my mom, and then they're all like going, "No way, who was it? Who was it?" Actually, I think I called my mom the next day because it was pretty late, and then she happened to be like with 3 of her sisters, and they all started going nuts. They're like, "Who was it?
That is hysterical." Well, because we never really like my dad's side never really like hung out with the Catanzarettis for some reason. Like I think Aunt Francie, I think probably Aunt Francie who passed away recently, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know.
It's
tough for me because
there's so many.
Yeah, my grandpa had he had 16 kids. Yeah, so it was a very big family.
And that's the thing, we never like connected because it just was too big.
It's so big, yeah. I can't believe
it.
Yeah. So we're second cousins, which is bizarre.
It's too funny.
Why don't you start out? Tell me a little bit about the work you do right now.
So right now I am working towards doing some editorials and portraiture. I just got off a tour and I was doing a lot of music stuff, and I'm trying to move into doing more portraiture, and that's what I'm working towards: studio stuff, on-site stuff, on location, and just trying to find clients. Been doing a lot of meetings, doing a lot of lunches, doing a lot of coffees, doing a lot of networking as much as I can as a new freelancer. So that's what I'm doing now.
What's the thought process behind that transition? Like, why portraits versus the more live, almost journalistic type shooting?
I think for me, it's a little more creative. I like to do the documentary stuff. I think finding moments and shooting backstage or shooting people with, famous people or whatever it is, that's interesting to me. But also I like to be a little more creative. I can come up with any idea for a photo shoot for somebody that is either a YouTuber or is a DJ or whatever it is, that they were like, oh, we need headshots, but I want to be a little more creative and find different stuff to do with people. And I think that path is the way I want to go instead of keeping doing the documentary stuff. Just personally, I don't know if there's anything else besides that. That's what I want to do. So, it's hard to transition that though. I think finding a studio space was great. Having a spot that I can actually bring people and bring them into whatever I have set up, and that's easier than having like coming into my apartment and setting up something, a little spot, and doing stuff like that, which I did in New York. So it's been great. I think it's been awesome. It's a good transition.
Yeah. I think that's actually like one of those things that people probably don't think about in terms of like the ease of the work that you're doing. And that's not necessarily to say you should always take the path of least resistance, but when I would think about like when I was starting out, the documentary stuff was the easiest for me to get into, because it's either, as a filmmaker, you're either getting into this doc wedding films and capturing the moment as it is, versus high production. You have to rent out spaces, you have to get actors, you have to make the set design look amazing, and you're doing more narrative stuff. That is way more difficult to get into because there's it's bigger budget, you have so much more to figure out. If I'm just going in there as like a documentary filmmaker, I just capture what's there.
Yeah, you're bringing one camera, a mic, you're running in, and it's running gun. Like I think I agree with that. It's easier to get into that stuff. I think I started as an assistant for a long time. I was assistant for Danny Clinch for 4 years. And that's kind of how his path was. He was an assistant and then went on tour with a band and then started doing portraiture and stuff like that. So I've kind of tried to, I don't want to say copy, but like mimic the way that he did his work and how he just is so successful doing that with musicians and being comfortable with musicians, and going on tour was a good start. It's actually a great start. And I think that's good for me that I was able to start on tour, and now I can find stuff to like, going into the studio and lighting somebody is a lot more difficult than going in, into a backstage area and finding some light and being like, oh, great, this is good, click. Like,
yeah.
it's a lot more difficult and thought out, and it's a lot more of a process and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And I'm a lot more interested in that kind of stuff.
Would you say that the two of those like require different skill sets? So the kind of making use and being resourceful and the element of like being on tour versus there's almost a higher stakes and higher pressure because it's like when somebody hires you to do a portrait, it's like really more detail oriented.
I would say yes and no to that question. You know, going on tour and doing stuff, you're going every single day, you know, 4 in a rows, waking up, doing a show, shooting it, waking up, doing a show, shooting it, like constantly. And I think it still is, you know, they still kind of go hand in hand where you still have to shoot, you still have to expose, right? You still have to do stuff like that technically. But your mindset creatively is just a little bit different. When you're going in and, you know, shooting a show and, you know, maybe you miss something. You're like, oh, well, he's going to do something later, the next song. Like, that's okay. But if you miss something in a portrait setting, like you're off of focus, you're off this, you're off that, like it's done. Like you kind of ruin that shoot. So you can take a lot more chances doing tour photography and documentary and like dragging shutters, whatever you want to do, and still be able to capture something where in a portrait setting, it's a little bit tougher to miss it and then look back and be like, oh my God, I missed the best moment of his or her facial expression. And that's tough. So
it's got the toughest thing about it, I think, has to be the making decisions, which is the most important thing. But it's like you can only really go in one direction. So say if you're setting up a portrait shoot, like the look of that, the tone of that, the color of the backdrop, you can't just endlessly experiment with all these different looks. It's like you have to think about the person that you're shooting and then say, all right, this is where we're going. Like maybe we can like try a couple of different things out on the day of, but I feel like you have to have a really clear vision.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I think last week I had a DJ come in and he wanted headshots just right here. He's like, I just want nice headshots for posters, you know, stuff that I can just put online that I can have like his name on with, you know, whatever club he's at. So that was like easy, great backdrop, light it, you know, one light, some fill, and it was easy. Where then I had a client come in who was a YouTuber and she is very, fun, and she wanted different color backdrops and different color she was just wearing different stuff, and I think that was a challenge to like get a backdrop, light it differently, maybe throw some gels in there, then like try to do like some flares and all that kind of stuff and just make it a little bit different for her. And I think that stuff is what I'm into, like being able to be like, oh well, if you like this, let's try this, let's do something a little bit different. And you know, testing different light setups is always fun for me.
Right. So, yeah, trying to get creative and trying to see like how much of it is worked out on the day of, like when you're when they come in.
I think sometimes I get methodical where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this lighting, this is what I want to do, and it doesn't work. You're like, okay, this is not working, this is not what I thought out, let's move things around, let's try it out. And then things will just click in my head, be like, oh, we should try this, and like I'll just set up a light differently and it works out. So sometimes I try to, you know, you can plan as much as you want. You can plan to a T exactly what you want to do, but there's always going to be a curveball. There's always going to be someone that's like, I don't like the way this looks, or I don't like the way that my face looks. I don't like the way that the shadows are on under my eyes, or whatever it is. And you just have to go with it and roll with it and make it work. So
isn't that true? Isn't it like I swear to God, every shoot something goes wrong.
Yeah,
something goes like you have a plan. You're like, this is exactly how it's going to go, and like we're very risk averse people where we want to make certain what we're getting into on the day of a shoot, and then it's just like, oh shit, the microphone's not working. Like, what do I do now? And it's like, how do I deal with this? Or the light isn't what I expected it to be. So many times I've had shoots with like some big company. I shot this Design Disruptors where we filmed with like, it was like 25 different companies. Some companies would give us like the most beautiful rooms to shoot in, and then some people would just put us in a side conference room there's nothing there, and you're like, well, this is it, this is what we're shooting with.
Sterile white walls. You're like, come on.
Yeah, you're like, all right, how
no
am I gonna
window light.
So we're running around the place trying to find plants, like fake
God.
plants to put in the background and set dress it, and you have to, I think like there's that element to it where you need to, it's about being able to deal with problems as they arise.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're good at, is being able to problem solve the day of and not stress about it. Like, you got to think about it and be like, okay, what do we need to make this work? And I think that's what makes us good videographers, photographers, whatever it is. I think that's part of the challenge and fun. It's fun to like be like, oh, all right, let's get this together and like really make this work and make it happen. So
how often do you have there been many moments where you're like, oh shit, I totally screwed that one up? I mean, like, really bad.
I would say really bad. Actually, I think the only time didn't do it personally, I did it as an assistant that I messed up kind of bad, where I didn't load a film camera. I had like a Hasselblad and I didn't forward the film to one, and he like clicked a shot and it's on like a blank shot. And Danny's a person that he understands, like I was learning or whatever, but he doesn't not gonna berate someone right in front of a client. He'll pull me aside and be like, hey, you didn't do this and I missed a shot and this is not okay. And I think that's something that was like the worst thing that's ever happened to me, that I was like, oh my God, like I can't make that mistake again. And like we've gone on set and like maybe a light didn't work. We're like, what do we do? Oh my God, like one of the tubes in the Kino flows doesn't work anymore. And we had no idea. Like trying to test stuff beforehand and like you just kind of learn. But knock on wood, right now I haven't run into any like really bad problems where things aren't working or anything like that. I try to really be prepared as much as you can, test everything the day before, make sure everything's right.
Yeah. Dude, I've done that. And what I was saying even before with like the mic situation I had, it was actually the beginning of that documentary where we go on the day of and then our mics just aren't working. There's like static interference, which like we tested it beforehand, but when we got there on the day of, there was nothing we could do and I didn't have a backup. Mm-hmm. But then it's like, just like you, it's like, I need to make sure that's never going to happen again. Mm-hmm. What can I do? All right, now I always bring a backup mic with me to make sure that if this does happen, I have a resolution for it.
Exactly.
You can't make the same mistake twice, especially when you have somebody like Danny who
Yeah, I couldn't. It was like, and then one of the things I remember, like, he's like, oh, I want black and white, and I put color in it by accident. And like the film stuff gets difficult where you're like trying to film and then you have digital and you're trying to load like 4 cameras and all that kind of stuff and you're by yourself and but you just are now conscious like, okay, I will never, ever, ever do that again. Because he was like, I thought I shot this on color and it was black and white and it was this whole thing.
Yeah.
But he was never someone that was screaming at me. He was always just like, come on, dude. Like, don't do this again.
Which I think in a lot of ways is like, it's not worse. Like, I think that screaming at somebody, I don't know. I don't enjoy people that have that kind of mentality or that are just kind of rude and disrespectful, because everybody makes mistakes.
Right.
And like, he hired you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, at the end of the day, it's like, you have to take responsibility for those decisions.
Totally.
But I think, like when somebody just pulls you to the side and be like, listen, this can't happen again.
Yeah.
You're like,
which was super cool. I think he was the nicest. Even nowadays, I think people aren't hiring those types of photographers that are just like belittling assistants and junior art directors or whatever they're doing. People just don't want it anymore. They're like, why are we hiring people that are being mean?
Yeah, like, there might have been this mentality where like that was just part of their creative inspiration, right? It was the fact that they have, they have this crazy high energy and they can be rude, but man, they're a genius.
Yeah.
And I think that people just don't care about that anymore.
Yeah.
They're like no, there's plenty of photographers, there's plenty of filmmakers out there. We can find somebody else
that we can work with and are nice and can like, get it together.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny.
So you went to North,
right?
Which is like the rival school of Voorhees, the high school that I went to. What was that like? Were you back into photography back then?
So I did do a lot of photo classes. I think I was doing it as elective because it was easy. Mm-hmm. I remember Mr. Barry, who was my teacher, was like, he was super cool and we learned a lot, but I was a little cross player and like that's what I thought I was going to do for the rest of my life. And I think when I went to school, I was doing a lot of video and doing a lot of photo and not like, I did like business school and art and technology, which was kind of like graphic design, and still was playing lacrosse. I was like, oh, this is what I'm going to do. And then I ended up getting hurt, tore my ACL, and I'm like, now what? What's the deal? What am I going to do? And I just had that creative like bug. I think I was like, I didn't want to be in this like business world or the graphic design world. I was like, I don't want to sit in front of a computer all day. I don't want to do numbers all day. I don't want to do any of this stuff. Like I want to be a photographer, videographer, director. And I actually watched a DVD that Danny made, and he directed it, and it was John Mayer's Where the Light Is DVD. I don't know if you've ever seen it. But it was genius. It was done really well. John did like 3 different sets where he started off as an acoustic set. He then did his John Mayer trio set, and then he did his John Mayer set. And it felt like 3 different bands playing, like an opener, a middle, and then the end. And it was so incredible. And I was like, who's that director? I was like, oh, it's Danny Clinch. I'm like, I don't even know who that is. So I looked him up and just emailed. I was like, hey, I want to do this. This is what I want to do. Like, I love music. I love photography, and I love your work. And I think it'd be awesome. Like, what do you have? Like, do you have an internship available? Whatever. So I went in an interview in a full suit and into a photo studio. I'm like buttoned up to the T and like all this stuff. And they kind of laughed at me. They were like, why is this guy in a suit? But they hired me. So I ended up interning with him, and I just didn't want to leave. I was like, this is the coolest ever. Like, I got to sit in like log footage for a Ryan Adams documentary. Like, this is incredible. Like, I could see all of what Danny was doing. And like, they first hired me, a producer that I'm really good friends with now. She was like, hey, like, you should come down to Bonnaroo and just work. I'm like, what? Like, I can come and like work at a music festival, like, and assist somebody? Like, of course, that's what I want to do. That was my first job ever, was coming down with Danny and like assisting and being a PA and getting coffee and getting water and whatever I needed to do to like make it work. So
I'm curious about that first email that you sent. Like, how did you break through the noise? I'm sure that, you know, they get these kind of requests all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I guess, I mean, you were saying I'll do anything. Like, what did you have any work previously done that you showed them? Or
I had nothing.
Yeah.
I had zero. I had a little bit. And I think I had my resume together as, you know, I worked in an Apple store. So I think that actually helped.
Oh, really?
Like, I was a specialist at an Apple store. So it kind of like, they needed help with, you know, one person's computer was broken. I was like, in the interview, I was like, oh, I can fix that. Fix it for them. And like stuff like that. They're like, oh, this guy's kind of technical and can get it. And like, he was cool, and that was it. Like, they didn't really, I don't know how many internships emails they get, to be honest. Like, when I was working there, it wasn't that many. So I think coming in and being like, oh, I'm from Jersey, Danny's from Jersey, like, that whole connection helped. And, you know, I'm not really sure, actually, how they picked. I should ask, actually.
Yeah.
Because Lisa Connolly, who's his studio manager, is still there. She'd be like, Lisa, what do you, like, why did you pick me? Honestly, I had no idea.
Yeah.
That's a funny question. I really have no idea.
Was it a paid internship?
No, it wasn't paid, but I was working at the Apple store and doing that and going to school. And
You were in college at the time?
Yeah, I was at Stevens Tech, and, you know, I just hustled. I'm still hustling, you know.
Yeah,
it's
never ends.
Never ends. It'll never end. And I think Danny's still hustling at, you know, over 50. Like,
I think you just gotta start to enjoy it.
Yeah.
You just gotta realize, like, this is it. Like, this is the fun part.
Yeah.
It's like the going after the jobs, like that excitement of getting a gig that you really like put a lot of effort into trying to lock down. Like, that's the best feeling.
Making
in
the
world.
decks, making everything. You're like, it took like a week to like get it all together, and then you get the email. It's like, all right, let's do this. You're like,
oh, shit.
Super stoked. Like,
right.
This is it.
You're
This
like,
is great.
And it's crazy because you're like, you had already put so much effort in, and you're like, this is the beginning. Now it starts. None of that stuff really matters as much as what I'm about to do right
Exactly.
now. That's cool. So then you do the internship, and then you start to actually like go on the road and do a little bit of stuff. Are you working pretty closely with Danny? Or?
Well, so what I did, you know, it's funny. I finished the internship, and there wasn't a job opening. There wasn't really anything. He had his assistants. He had all his stuff. And I was like, what do I do? I asked Lisa. She's like, oh, you should go intern at Rolling Stone and see if you want to go try that out. So I went and did that. Deb Dragon, who was the photo director there, and Sasha Leku, who is now the photo director there. I went in, same thing, went in like a suit, and like they were like, oh, like Danny gave you a good recommendation, like let's do this. So I interned there, which was super fun. You know, you kind of learn how a magazine works and how they work and what they're picking and what photographers are picking and how they're picking photographers, and all that kind of stuff is really invaluable. Like, I forget how much I learned there sometimes. So I did that. And then this producer, Carrie Bornstein, was hiring me as a PA. So I was a PA for a year, I think. And I was nonstop doing commercials and like big stuff with Steven Meisel and, you know, Albert Watson and all these huge, you know, different music videos with Lady Gaga and all this stuff. So that was fun to see how big production works. And then mostly she would hire me for Danny stuff. Like if Danny had a music video or whatever he had, I was a PA. So then, let's see, I did that, and I was working as a photo editor for a little bit with Rolling Stone, and Danny, I really wanted to work with him. That's all I wanted. I was like, I want to work with this guy. I want to figure it out. And I went in, I emailed him. I was like, hey, I can help you out with your Instagram, Twitter, website, Facebook, all this stuff. If you let me come in 3 days, 4 days a week, like I'll do this for you. And I brought him like a whole presentation, like what I can do, how I can help, all this stuff. I kind of just like sought it out for myself. I was like, this is what I want to do. And he was like, cool, hired me for that. And then like, it's all timing. Like this whole, as you know, like this whole industry is all about timing.
You made it easy for him too. Like you know what I mean? Like you have to put in the effort, and nobody's going to do it for you. You can't just like send an email like, hey, any job openings? Like, no, like you got to put in some extra legwork.
Yeah. And I think he appreciated that I was like, this is how like I can do all of this for you. Mm-hmm. Instagram just started. Like, you need to get your followers up. You need to get your stuff up. And, you know, he's over like 100K now because I helped him. I don't want to say it was just me. You know, his work is incredible, and I think that also helped. But just organizing it the right way and posting the right times and all that kind of stuff, I helped him out with. And then, you know, someone who was his retoucher scanner, she left, and then he was working on a book. And this girl who was working on the book was also a retoucher. She's like, oh, I'll take that job. And then Danny was like, hey, can you work on the book? Like, can you photo edit the book? I was like, sure. Like, I'll do whatever you want me to do. Like, that's why I'm here. Mm-hmm. So I started doing that, and then he started hiring me as an assistant. I was there. I was always, like, trying to help out. And he, you know, if Rolling Stone or whatever magazine had a little budget for an assistant, he'd hire me to do it. So I just went on. I would hand him cameras, whatever I was doing, load stuff. I knew what I was doing. And then it just kind of snowballed. I'd finished the book with him. I was a third assistant, second assistant, first assistant, and then was full time with him. So I did it full time. But also was trying to be my own photographer, like shoot shows. That's a whole nother thing. Like I was
how many hours are you putting in at this point? You're hustling pretty hard.
I was nonstop. Yeah. I literally would, like, you know, even working on the book, we would sit and drink 2 bottles of wine together and be 2:00 in the morning and be like, oh my God, like we did a lot, but we would sit nonstop. And then the next day I'd come in, do a bunch of work, and then a show would pop up, and I'd be like, I gotta go shoot the show. So I go shoot the show, and I was like nonstop. I couldn't stop. I still don't want to stop. You know, I still want to keep shooting every single day, even though it gets to be a lot. But
how old were you at this time when you were putting in these crazy hours? And
23, I think.
Yeah.
I started at 23, and then, you know, Rolling Stone helped because I could say that I shot on spec for Rolling Stone, and I'd go and shoot shows. And I also was like sneaking in as a NYU photographer because I went to NYU for a semester. I skipped that part.
No, but it's funny how these things, the experience builds. It's because it kind of catches up to you and you don't realize it because you got your head down, you're just working your ass off. Mm-hmm. And then you kind of take a step back and you're like, oh shit, like I do have this Rolling Stone credit. I have worked with Danny. And then like all these things add up to where all of a sudden, I don't know if doors start to open, but like when you knock on the doors, then they'll open. Like
totally.
Once you go to them, it's a little bit easier.
It helps. And I think people respect Danny so much. And I think I was on set with him, and, you know, as an assistant, you don't want to walk up to a client and be like, hey, I'm going to be a photographer soon, or I'm going to do that. Like, I never was that type of person. So I think Danny was always grateful for that, and is now more likely to be like, oh, well, maybe Dan can do this, or something like that, like a job or whatever it is. Like maybe Dan should do it, or his old assistants, whatever, like Josh, who was his old assistant, he'd pass it on to Josh, or whatever it is. He was good like that. I
think it's like patience, right? Like you have the patience to not be that eager that you're like asking for something, as opposed to just standing back and be like, hey, anything you need, I'll help you out with. Yeah. Because people can read right through that. They can read right through it if you're like, hey, like maybe I could, you know.
Yeah. And I think like handing business cards out, like I've heard stories of assistants doing that, and like then they get fired. It's like you can't be like you're your assistant, that's what you do, and you follow the steps. And I think that's where I was trying to figure out, like, how do I become this photographer? What do I do? What are the steps? I was researching, and I'm like, you become an assistant, you learn, and then you move on. And that's what I figured out.
That's a big lesson, though. The even like the the etiquette when you're working with like a primary shooter or whatever it is. If somebody hires you for a job, like we would see this with weddings from time to time, where like I was a filmmaker, shot many weddings, and then sometimes like I would sometimes have a second filmmaker there. I haven't had that experience, but I've seen it where other photographers would bring a second shooter, and the second shooter, I'd see them like hand their business card to somebody, and I'm like, oh, that's inappropriate.
Yeah,
you can't hand your personal business card to a potential client because you are working for this person. You're representing this company. Right.
It's not smart.
It's not smart. It's not a good look, and you're gonna like quickly bury yourself because that's what it's like. You said early on, it's all about relationships, and like who knows, like that. I mean, first of all, it's about being just a good person too, right? And not like trying to get something and trying to really manipulate people to get what you want. But it's like, hey, I'm working for this person. I'm going to treat them with respect, and I'm going to do anything I can to fulfill what they need me to do.
Totally. And you know, I've met so many people through Danny, and they're just like friends now. They're not like, I don't have to, you know, managers for certain bands or whatever, but I'm not like actively being like, hey, can I shoot your stuff? Like, we're just friends and we have a relationship, and if there's a younger band that they're starting to manage, like, I'll shoot them. So I think that's always good, and not asking for things and not reciprocating. I think that's always something that a lot of people do, where they're like, hey, like, can I come shoot this? And then like, if for any reason they ask you for something and you don't help them out, then like, why? What do you mean? Like, you're not going to help me out with something now that I helped you and all that kind of stuff. And just being a reciprocating relationship with people is always good.
Did we touch on, I don't know a lot about Danny Clinch, and like, how did he become so well known, and what's his backstory?
So he is, let's see. So he's from Jersey. He's from Toms River. He started in New York City, and he was assisting Annie Leibovitz for a while. And I think he did like Timothy White, who's a big photographer out here now. Stephen Meisel, he assisted. So he assisted a lot of people, and then moved into, in like the early 90s, he started doing hip hop stuff when no one wanted to shoot hip hop stuff. He was the guy like that shot Illmatic or shot the cover with Tupac for Rolling Stone with his shirt off. He's got really iconic hip hop stuff that not many people know that he shot, which is really crazy. But now with the book, it kind of helped. So he started in hip hop. That's all he did. Is that he like no one else wanted to shoot that stuff.
That's crazy.
It's unbelievable. Like, I think he shot Third Base, and then MC Search was like, "Yo, you need to shoot this guy Nasty Nas. Like, he's the next thing." And it's the Illmatic cover. I'm like, this is incredible. And
yeah, one of the greatest hip hop albums
like ever. And he, you know, was shooting Redman and shooting ODB and all these people, and like DOS Effects and like all these like random early 90s stuff. And I think that started his career. He started like, that was the people that he was shooting, and then moved into doing a lot of rock and roll stuff. So he actually shot like the first Kanye record. He shot a lot of he ended up shooting a lot of Nas's records after, and then started shooting like Bruce and Bob Dylan and Neil Young and Willie Nelson and all this stuff. So he transitioned from being this hip hop photographer, went on tour with Blind Melon. So that's a whole thing too, which he's working on a documentary with Blind Melon, which is going to be really, really awesome. But you know, he grinded along. He did the same thing. Like, he started it from the bottom with the hip hop guys that thought no one, you know, they were nobody. And now they're all more famous than a lot of these rock and roll guys.
Yeah, man. It's crazy because I feel like and I'm not like too good with the history of music and everything like that, but I would imagine, you know, hip hop started to take off in the 80s, like mid to late 80s, I guess.
Yeah.
And then probably on all Rolling Stone, every cover was just rock and roll during that time.
Yeah.
And then so hip hop was really untapped because it was just on the rise.
Yeah.
And then I imagine eventually, probably in the 90s, is when they started to make it on to the cover of Rolling Stone and these big magazines.
I think like, I'm trying to remember, like, I think the Ice-T cover was the first like controversial like gangster rapper on the cover, and he was in a cop outfit, and it just said "cop killer" on the like.
Oh shit!
So it was this whole thing, and I think that was like one of the big points of like hip hop's here to stay. And I think, but no one cared. No one wanted to shoot these guys. They were like, I'm not gonna go into Queensbridge Like when it was the hood, like really bad, and like go shoot some guy named Nasty Nas. Like, who is this guy? And then no one wanted to do it.
Yeah.
They were, I mean, and they were probably scared to go in. And Danny was like, I'll do it. I don't care.
That's
like,
great.
And they all loved him at that point. Like,
is there something about like that in terms of being specific about the genre or type of work? Because you do become known for it in a way. I know a lot of filmmakers who start out, making weddings or doing music videos, and that's all the work they can get in the future because all the work you get in the future is based on the work you've done in the past. So it's like, how have you seen that trajectory with the work you do?
I think, well, from going on tour, you start to become a tour photographer, and that's what I love doing it, but I don't want to do that the rest of my life. And I think that's something that I've been trying to get away from and do more portraiture stuff, but I still want to stay in music, which is hard. Music is tough. I don't know if have you done any music videos or anything like that?
I haven't. I started out doing one of my first earliest clients was Robot Films, which does all the music videos, a lot of hip hop music videos. And I would just do behind the scenes work for like Mario and Lady Gaga music videos. But that's it. I just did behind the scenes stuff. I didn't do actually primary.
I mean, some of those, they have budgets, but a lot of them don't have budgets. So
most of them now, it's just like very bootstrap. Yeah. Like only like the top performing artists get like millions of dollars in budgets.
And if that, $1 million is a lot
like
for
Taylor
a music
Swift
video.
maybe, but that's it.
So, it's tough to stay in music. So that's where the portraiture kind of comes into play, where I'm like, okay, so now I can bring in these like either YouTubers or digital stars or digital creators and other people that aren't just musicians. But they do kind of translate over, like they kind of like overlap with like the way you're shooting something. Or like I shot this, like one of my fiance's clients, and we went out to the desert and shot in like a car and like a 66 Mustang. And like I could put any musician in any of those photos and they'd be great. Like, so I think that you do have to have an overlap, but also you don't want to just pigeon yourself as a music tour photographer, or a music photographer or a wedding. Like it's just hard to break out of that pigeonhole.
You probably got to do that soon. Like I think that there is some value in like when you start to get work and you're trying to get paid for the first time to just stick to one lane, but like you don't want to get stuck in that one lane, because especially, I don't know, it just gets kind of like boring to do the same shit over and over again. You're like, all right, because you master it and you're like, I want to do something a little bit different. I want to push myself and get a little bit more creative. For sure.
I think, and there's also nothing wrong with being a tour photographer. Like I loved it, and I have so many friends that do it, and it's great and it's awesome. And there's a need for it for sure, especially for musicians, especially for people that need the content on Instagram or Facebook, whatever it is. It's awesome, and I have a lot of really good friends who are great photographers that do it. But that's just not me per se. Like I think I loved doing it for that tour, and if John were to call me and say, let's do another one, I'd be totally down for it. But to do like a van tour or to do something different, I think I would probably pass on it and just stay in LA.
You mean, like the ones that are like, there's no budget for a bus or anything.
Yeah, like stuff like that, I just don't think I would do, depending on who it is, If it's someone I really believe in, like who I love their music, maybe. Just all depends.
That's the thing, is that there's certain people that would reach out to you and you'd be like, it might be worth it just to take 6 months, or it's a drain too, man. It's a lot of work, and like being on the road, even if like you have there's a budget for it and like you have a bus that you can stay on, all this stuff is like, it can get draining. And some people live for that shit. I don't. I'm like, I like a routine. I like to be at home.
Same.
Especially when you're in a relationship, it's kind of tough to do the on the road thing.
For sure. Last year, so I can go into that, where I was still working with Danny and then get a call from a manager that I'm friends with, and he was like, hey, can you go on tour for 2 weeks? I was like, sure, like that should be fine. Get a call from another manager, they're like, hey, like, do you want to go on tour for 2 weeks? I'm like, yeah, sure. And they're like, here's the rate we have. I'm like, oh great, that's actually a really good rate, like whatever it is. And it ends up to be with John Mayer. I'm like, oh, that's cool.
They left that out?
Yeah, they left that out until like I think the end of the call, he's like, and I had to ask. I was like, oh, well, who's this with? Like I had no idea. So I went up to Albany. We did rehearsals, and the first day they were like, John just liked everything I did and was like, can you do the whole tour? I'm like, I don't even know what the whole tour is. I had no idea. And it ended up being like a month and a half from April to May, and then a month off, and then another month in Europe, and then a month off, and then another couple weeks, or 2 months. 2 months in the US again, and then a couple weeks off, and then Brazil for a couple weeks. So it was a lot. And in between all of that, I moved to LA from New York. I left being an assistant. I got engaged. I did all this like crazy stuff in all last year, and it just all happened so quickly. And now I'm in LA, and it feels good to just work on myself and work on the stuff that I want to work on. So
right. I think that's the thing. Anytime you take on a big commitment or a big project, you realize that you're going to have to say no to a lot of other stuff.
Yep.
And it's going to make everything else a little bit more challenging. Like you really, and that's why I think it's so important to kind of to make those decisions thoughtfully. Mm-hmm. I think in the beginning, it's like to take on a big opportunity like that is huge, to be like, yeah, I'm going to do this. But then like, as you start to progress and you get more accomplishments under your belt, it's like, all right, if I'm going to write a book or if I'm going to make a feature documentary or whatever it is, like it's a lot of work, and you need to make sure that that's the path that you really want to go down.
Yeah. I mean, for you too, like the documentaries, those could be a year long.
More than that,
if not longer, right? Like, and prepping and all this kind of stuff. I think even for tour photography, you have to block out 6 months of your life, and there's nothing wrong with it, but then you have to turn down stuff, you know? You have to turn down maybe a magazine calling you, be like, hey, can you shoot this? And you're like, no, I'm in Kansas City. You know, I can't. So I kind of want to stay around and stick around for a minute, and hopefully I can start getting that kind of work. And that's what I'm working towards. And, you know, we'll see. So
it seemed like you must have been on like Instagram pretty early. I mean, you had the @ you got the @ Daniel, man. Like, how the hell did you get that?
Well, so it wasn't as early. It was like 3 years ago. My fiance does a lot of digital stuff, and she found out that it was an empty account. Wow. And it wasn't really like she just kind of was like, hey, can my boyfriend have this? And they're like, sure.
Oh, she knew somebody at Instagram?
Knew kind of like, it was like someone who was low end, but like they were like, yeah, no one has it.
Oh,
no one had it.
So you got the @ Daniel.
So yeah, so it works. It helps.
Yeah. It's funny because your Twitter is your last name, which is like really hard to spell.
My website's my last name. I'm like, oh my God, I need to change all this stuff.
You need that Daniel.com.
Oh, dude. I've looked for all that stuff.
Yeah. My friend Josh, who's in minimalism, he got, I think it's @ JFM for his Twitter. And it was just because he reached out to them and he's like, hey, nobody's using this. Can I use it?
Yeah.
And then eventually, I think he just kept hounding them.
Yeah.
And this was years ago too. And they changed it. So I feel like there's something there. Do you have the check mark on any of yours?
No, not yet.
Gotta get that check mark.
I'm trying.
I don't have it on any of mine, but I'm like, how do you do it? Because I applied through Twitter, and then they're like, "No, you're not it yet."
Oh, Twitter's hard.
Is it?
Twitter is hard.
You have to really be like.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah. I feel like somebody needs to know you, or like you need to have a connection there for it to be able to work out.
Well, I'll talk to Lisa. Maybe she can
really?
push something through for you.
Yeah. I feel like it makes a difference because I mean it's you shouldn't judge people based on these things, and it's not like a overall like definitive judgment, but it is if I see that somebody comments on my thing and they have a thing, and I'm like, oh, who is this person?
Yeah,
they must
immediately. You're like, well,
it's credibility
for you too. I mean, you have the director credits. You should be like. I think Lisa has it because she's a producer, so she has it because she has all these IMDb credits.
Yeah.
So there's a way.
Yeah. We'll talk about that after this.
There's a way.
That was cool though, because but I mean, you did see it pretty early on with Danny Clinch and like starting his Instagram. How have you seen? I feel like that's the platform right now for visual creatives.
Yeah.
Like Instagram seems to be
for sure. But I also think you can't focus just on that. I think we all know with Mark Seliger right now, we have no idea if Instagram goes away tomorrow, half of the photographers that are on there might not know what to do. Like, where do you go then? So I think knowing both sides is good. Doing the traditional side assisting, working, getting editorial work, stuff like that, then getting your ad work is good to know, but also knowing the digital side and how to get work through that. Because the market you don't know. You have no idea.
It's like investing. I mean, dude, it would
is.
be crazy to just put all your money in one company.
Yeah.
And all in one thing. And that's what you're doing, like literally putting if all you're focusing on is Instagram.
Yeah.
So like it probably would make best sense to maybe pick 2-3 social media platforms, but then also, like you said, to be focusing on the actual professional work. I think that's what you should always be focusing on. A majority of the time, it's just the work that you're creating, and then figure out a way to make it look good online, or figure out the best photos or videos to post on social. But like, who said it? I forget who said it, but Beck Shern, who I had on the podcast, she was saying how I don't want to be somebody who's known for being good at Instagram. I want to be somebody who's known for being an amazing dietitian and nutritionist. Like, that's what I want to be known for. Right. It's the work that I do. It just, I also happen to have a great Instagram account, which I feel like if that's what you're doing, if you're just focusing on your art and craft, then that's the best way to.
Well, there's like two sides to it. You know, for me, some of my favorite photos that I've taken don't get as many likes as me going to the beach and taking a sunset photo. It's like, what looks good on Instagram might not look good on an ad, or might not look good on a billboard, or might not look good on a bus stop, or whatever it is. So I just think that you have to be able to do both and know that, like, you can be a photographer, videographer, but you need to know how to do the social media stuff too. But some things don't also translate over. I think, like, I've seen some videos that look cool on my phone, but then when you put them on a screen, they don't look any better. They're like, wait, this looks cool in a square format, but doesn't look cool on, 4K big screen. Like, so, I think you just can't focus on that stuff. And what my fiance does, she finds creators that, aren't just YouTubers or aren't just models on Instagram or whatever they are. She finds these people that are real creators and molds them into traditional talent. So an actor or an activist or somebody, and you just can't pigeon yourself into just a digital person. For her, I think she's smart enough to be like, oh, you need to have a real career too. Like, you need to have an acting career or a music career or something else, because if YouTube is gone tomorrow, you need to figure out what you're going to do. Yeah. So
I think that's the thing too, like with a lot of creatives, like you can't just be a singer these days. You need to be able to dance. You need to be able to have all these other skills and talents that accompany that. For sure. So as a filmmaker, you could also dabble into photography or motion graphics or whatever it is. I think it's really important, especially early on, to be like resourceful and be able to do a lot of stuff yourself. Yeah. Because in the beginning, you're going to get a client that's going to come to you and say, hey, can you do this? And you're like, I guess, yeah. I can figure out how, maybe don't tell them that, but you're like, all right, I'll figure out how to make this motion graphic work. Yeah.
Well, I have a friend that did that. So he actually came to Brazil with me and helped me do some video stuff with John. And he's a great video guy. He's a good editor, and he got into doing stage visuals for artists, and he loves it, and he's killing it with it, but he also can do video. So he's doing all these stage graphics, and like we'll go out and film something and then just like edit it in weird, creative, different ways, and he's making a huge business off of it. Wow. And it's incredible.
That's such a cool example of like taking that specific craft of filmmaking and like, how can I use it in a different way? Yeah. And this is just like the visuals that would be behind, like on the stage or on the background during a live performance. Yeah.
So he like found a little niche that like a lot of people weren't doing. He absolutely killing it, and it looks great. And he did like Party Next Doors and Migos, and like he's been working with Party Next Door for a while. But he does a lot of like G-eazy's. He did like a ton. And
that's
awesome.
So cool. Yeah, that's like high stakes too, man. Yeah. Like live shows, like it's got to really look right and feel right, and not like it's got to contribute to the show without taking away from it.
For sure.
So you just started. What was this transition? So was it going? Well, I was going from working with Danny to John Mayer loosely. Yeah. Doing that tour and then coming back, and now you're like hardcore freelance mode. Yeah. That's a pretty good gist of it.
Yeah, basically. I went on tour, and then I saved a lot of money being on tour. Yeah. And that helped me find a studio. got in, I was like, I need a place to shoot. I want to do studio stuff. I want to get editorial work. This is what I want to do. So moved into that, and then I just started emailing and calling and texting, and anyone that I can get a coffee, a lunch, a dinner, a drink, anything that I can do that maybe someone could hire me for, I'm doing. So nonstop.
What's that? That's just a hustle, man.
That is, and I'm by myself, so it's not like I have an agent doing it. I'm gonna meet some agents, but I don't know how much I can take away from me continually doing it, because I actually enjoy hounding people, but like these helps.
Days, you might not need it, especially this at this point. It's like I've had some meetings with some agents and stuff, and nobody wants to sign me now, but they're all like let us know on that next project. But I'm like, I don't know if I want to give you like 10 to 15% of what I'm doing or whatever.
Something that I found for myself.
Yeah, it's especially today. It's like we can just create shit on our own, and we can figure it out. And I think there's probably a place down the road where that might be appropriate if you want to really start to book bigger stuff. But it takes a lot of hustle. What has been the conversion of success? Like, I mean, you go out, all these people that you reach out to, it's like, how many of them turn into a paying gig for you?
Let me think. Right now, specifically, I think maybe 3 or 4 people it's happened to already, which is great.
Out of how many people that you reach out to? Just like dozens and dozens?
Hundreds. I mean, I'll sit and DM people. I'll sit and email any photo editor I can possibly get my hands on. I just cannot stop.
That's
I'm like,
great.
because I get in this weird mode of like, I need to work always. And if I'm not editing or retouching or whatever I'm doing one week, I have to be shooting the next week. If I'm not doing it that day, I have to be shooting the next day. Like stuff like that. I have to keep myself busy, or I get in this weird like cabin fever type ish. I'm like, I can't be in my apartment. I can't be driving around doing nothing in errands or doing laundry. Like, I have to do stuff.
So when you're reaching out to these people, and like a lot of it will be lunch or coffee or whatever, like what's the approach, or is it different every time? Is sometimes it's like, hey, I'm currently taking on work. If like, how are you normally messaging people?
I would say it's more like, hey, what am I doing?
You can't go out on like 100 coffees.
No. But I did it the other day. I was like, I had someone with Interscope. I had someone that's a freelance producer, and then someone else, like,
you just like
a
batch it
manager,
together.
and I was like, you're literally like back to back to back, and I'm running around LA just like
full
having tea. He's like, I can't have coffee, or I'm like,
you can have 8 coffees in a day.
But yeah, you have to. I think a lot of it is intros from people. Like, my fiance helps me with intros, and then other people have introed me to other people, and all that kind of stuff. And then I'm like, hey, like, let's go get lunch. And then hopefully that'll be the way to get into with people. Like, because I think face-to-face is so much better than like email and be like, hey, I'm available for work. And they'd be like, okay, cool, I'll keep you in mind. Like, they'll never.
No, I say that to people all the time.
Half the time.
I say, it's like, oh yeah, no, I'll keep in mind for future stuff, archive. And then, because it's like, it takes a lot of effort for me to recall people, and especially when somebody else is going to message me a couple weeks later
for sure
with the same request. I'm like, it doesn't really matter.
You can't do, like, especially for photo editors, like, they get hundreds of emails a day from photographers who want to shoot for the magazine, and it's really hard to get anybody to respond to you. I think I got 3 responses out of the 50 emails that I sent one week, and it's like, fine, like, I get it. You have to send promos out, you have to send this stuff out, you have to get meetings with people, and like, you just have to hustle. And sometimes an agent, that's what to touch on that point, can help with the relationship to get you in the door with certain editorials. And that's something, that's really helpful, because when people see you and talk to you and know that you can have a conversation with a photo editor, then you can have a conversation with a talent, or you can have a conversation with the people that they're shooting, or whoever it is, and you can make it happen and have someone be comfortable. So the face-to-face is needed, I think. And email's not going to just, like, it just doesn't work. Yeah. I think.
I mean, those are huge stakes, too, if you're doing magazine covers, and not only just dealing with the talent, but making sure you deliver. And there's only, a lot of times, it's like, here's 30 minutes with the talent. Like,
if that. Sometimes it's 5. I've had like a 5 to 10 minute shoot. Who was it with? Can't remember now. But it was like, yeah, let's do it real quick. I'm like, okay. I think it was I can't remember now. But it was literally like click, 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 click. I would do here, here, and that was it.
You just like, are you like not anxious, but just like kind of like a little bit jittery?
Yeah.
Like
A little bit.
Fuck it, yeah, I know that
like,
feeling.
Make sure my settings are great. I'll lock my settings. So I'm like, I have the light already. It's all good.
Yeah.
And make sure I just focus and take enough that there is one that's focused.
Yeah,
you know?
we had that with Dwayne Wade, where it was we got flown down to. We did it 2 years in a row because he was with this. I don't know if he's still with them, but this clothing brand Li Ning, I think it is. It's like a Chinese Nike, and so we went down to New Orleans for the All-Star Weekend, and it was like the All-Star Weekend with Dwayne Wade, and we were supposed like we didn't really get to follow him around personally. We would follow him around when he was in public at the live stuff, but then like we wouldn't like go back to his hotel room, but it needed to feel like that. And it needed to, we only had one interview with him that was 5 minutes with like all these other people around and like trying to figure, like during the middle of this event, it's like, how do we make this seem like an intimate conversation? 5 minutes. Every question is important. Like if one question, and I had somebody else ask the questions, and then like the first one, I understand you kind of want it to be a softball, but I'm like, you just threw away a question.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we only have 5 minutes. You need to make sure every question lands. And there's an excitement to those situations where you're like, oh shit, like it's all coming down to this one moment. Yeah. And then when you get it, you're like, oh fuck, thank God.
Yeah. Thank God.
Yeah. Thank God this worked out because I only had 5 minutes and you can't redo it.
No.
And it makes sense with these people, like the big stars. It's their time is very precious and they don't have. They can't give it away to everybody.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I just did a thing with g-eazy and Stillhouse's like whiskey, and he was leaving for Paris the next day for tour, and like, not that he didn't want to be there. He just like he was tired. He was a Buddhist, but then you just got to get him going. And then we only had like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, and we shot and took a little break, and then shot for another like hour, and that was it. An hour seems like a long time, but it's not when you're shooting. As you know, you're like, wow, that went by quickly, where you're moving lights, you're moving stuff, you're talking with him, or whatever, and it's gone.
Yeah. I mean, if you have 2 hours to set up, you'll use 2 hours and 15 minutes. Like it's always, you're always kind of tweaking and you can always adjust something.
Yeah.
We were talking a little bit before this started about free work.
Yeah.
Like how do you view taking on free work?
I think it depends on the relationship and who is asking for. I don't think anyone's really asking for free work. Sometimes I'll offer it to people, like different managers or agents or people that work with a lot of different artists. I think artist relationships and just being able to know the people that have different artists with them, like the manager that has 4 different clients. There's one client that doesn't have a budget. The other client has a huge budget. They need photos for stuff. The client that doesn't have a big budget, I'm like, sure, let's just do that. And then the next day, let's go shoot whoever else and have a budget for it. So I try to offset it with that and know who I'm offering free work to. But a lot of it, I just don't want someone to come to me and be like, hey, like, can you shoot me for your portfolio? I'm like, well, I can make that judgment call of like who I want in my portfolio. And if that's something that I can offer for free, great. Like if I think that something is really good for me and my portfolio to put in on my website, whatever it is, I could do it for free. If it's someone that's going to come to me and just be like, well, I don't have any money, but it'd be good for you. I'm like, well,
let me decide on that one.
Let me decide that one.
Yeah.
So
I got that so much early on. And a lot of people, so many people would just message you and be like, we don't have a big budget, but like, it would be good for your portfolio or it'd be a really fun project to work on. And I'm like, I'll let you know if this is going to be, it's like, especially once you start to build up your experience, like you're not doing this for fun. Yeah. I mean, you enjoy it. You love the work, but you do it because you get paid for it, because you're passionate about it. But like at the end of the day, it's a job and you need to make money.
For sure. And I think even like, let's say an editorial hits me up or anybody like, we only have $200. Most of the time I'll be like, sure. Depending on like the usage or, whatever the embargoes are or whatever they are, if they're small enough but it's a good project, I'll do it. Especially when you're starting out, I think it is hard to get those bigger budgets and get a bigger ad gig or a bigger whatever. You just have to do a lot more smaller gigs. So I think it's been working out. I think I've offset it enough where I've done a lot of free stuff, but also done a lot of paid stuff, and it's enough. I think I have a good balance.
I feel like it'd probably be pretty wide range when you're starting out, like in terms of the rate that you would charge for like. Do you charge? Also, do you do like hourly or do you do day rates?
Day rates.
Do you do half day rates as well, or just full day? Like
If it's a day, it's a day.
It's a day. Even if it's like an hour.
It's yeah, I'll just charge a day. Depending, again, it all depends on who the person is. If I have a good relationship with this manager, agent, whatever it is, and they're like, hey, we only have this much money for a half day, can you do it? Most of the time I'll say yes, depending on what it is. Mm-hmm. It's all kind of client based and who the person is asking. I'm trying to think, like, there is a day rate for video stuff too, but for me, I have to worry about usage. I'm sure you have to worry about it all the time. Like how much you're using it for a year, or using it for, are you buying out my footage? Are you buying out my photos for ever?
I think that actually might be a difference, and maybe that's just that I haven't cared to look into that as much. It's like, I feel like with photography, I hear more about that. It's like, what's the usage look like? It's like, how long do you have, or like getting access to the raw files. Mm-hmm. Usually people are asking for raw files with film, and like you said, a lot of times it's fluid and you have to figure out, well, do I like this client, like I just had a client, one of my biggest clients for years, and they asked me for all like the archival footage of everything that we've shot because I recently stopped doing client work, so I can't really do anything for them. And like I didn't charge them anything for it. I was like, here you go. Like they were like an amazing client, just the best people in the world. And I'm like, of course, like, you know, it's as much as your footage as it is mine.
Yeah.
And I don't know if people deal with that with film as much, because it is like getting the raw files. I feel like I know photographers don't want to give away the raw files because the edit is just as much of that project as the initial shoot, right?
For sure.
And so how do you approach those kind of?
I've only gotten asked for raw files once so far, and I was okay with it because it was an ad shoot. I was like, that's fine, you can have it. Like, they were paying me good money. Yeah. I was okay with that. And they were cool people. But usually if I'm sending photo, I'll never send anything bigger than like a JPEG, depending on like if I'll send like 100 photos, be like, here's my edit from the shoot. Tell me 10 to 15 that you want to use. I'll retouch them and send you high res. But I'll never give raw files. It's like giving away your film. Like if I shot a bunch of film and like someone was like, hey, can I have the actual negatives? I'm like, no, you can't. Like, that's the thing. It's people don't know. I don't know. I think the raw files is a weird thing for me. Like, I don't want to give anybody anything that I haven't edited.
Right.
Unless it's somebody that paid for it, I guess. I don't know. I'm trying to think of how. I
think that's the thing, is that it's not so straightforward, but it is like, well, the one thing I would say is that I generally wouldn't, like early on, I wouldn't take any freelance projects. Actually, no, I would. This is wrong. But I would take freelance projects whenever, like, I would shoot it, and then maybe I would just shoot it and I wouldn't do any editing. But then eventually it came to a point where I was like, man, it doesn't make sense to just do these one-offs where I shoot for the day and then I hand off all the footage and then I don't have any other contact with the project, because when I started to produce my own projects, work directly with the clients, you're making way more money, and you charge project rates. You know, you charge day rates, but you can also charge a project rate. We're like, okay, this is going to cost $5,000 or $10,000, whatever it is. You can't really charge that for, like, if you're just shooting, because you have just your day rate and that's it. So I found that being in control of the entire thing, you could make much more money. And then also you have a vision for how you're going to execute on it. And you're going to be able to deliver way better than somebody else if you're just handing that footage off.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. And I think, you know, when you're shooting photos, especially on an ad shoot that they want the raw files, you're there with, you know, an art director, a creative director, you know, there's multiple people on set and they're editing while you're on set. So I'm shooting and like they'll 5-star something or they're 3-star something or whatever it is. So they are already kind of editing what they want. And then I go in and edit what I want. And then they have everything and it's just easier. Where if like, you know, an editorial comes along and you don't want to give them all those files and they only use it for the one time. They get it for the one magazine and then they're yours. You own all that stuff. So most usually. So the raw file thing is always a weird thing for people, and I try to use the film thing, like be like, but I give you my negatives, and that's kind of gives people a little more perspective.
Yeah.
Be like, oh, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. How did you know what to charge as a day rate? And I'm sure, like, has it increased over? I mean, you've just, I guess, for the freelance stuff has been pretty recent. But like, how did you know when to start out? Is there like an industry standard that you're thinking about, or are you just like, this is what my time's worth?
There's no industry standard. I think everyone's different, and there kind of is when you get to a certain level. Like, 10 of the biggest famous photographers probably all have the same rate. Basically,
What's like the high end rate for like the top 10 photographers in the world? Is it like
for editorial?
So it's different for everything.
Yeah, if it's an ad, it's probably like $50,000 a day. It could be, but
hilarious,
which is ridiculous. Yeah, which is so crazy. Imagine I mean, I've seen Danny get really good rates, and you're like, oh, that's really cool. And then he can do those little shoots that don't have any money.
Yeah, so that's what I love about that, and that's what I love about Brian Bowen Smith was that like you can do these massive budget things, these big artist stuff, and then the next day be working with like somebody who currently is no name, that nobody knows who they are, and you have to be open to that.
You have to, especially Danny had no idea who Blind Melon was. Yeah. He was I think he was shooting for that band Live. Do you remember that band Live that was from Pennsylvania or whatever?
Yeah.
And Blind Melon was opening for them, and I think Danny didn't really vibe with them or something like that. And then Blind Melon came along, and he was like, became friends with those guys, like on the road. And they were like, oh, we're going to be the next thing. And he's just like, oh, cool. Like, let's go on a tour. And he went on tour with them, and then they blew up. They absolutely blew up.
Wow.
And, they did Woodstock in 99, and they went on tour with the Stones, and they went on tour with, I think they went on tour with Neil Young, right? Anyway, they just became huge, and you just don't know.
Yeah. And
even for John stuff, like there was an opener, Laney. I don't know if you know who they are, and they're starting to like really blow up. So like, you should photograph those people because you never know what's gonna happen. And I think the people that have gotten in early, like Danny has the early photos of Nas. Those are the photos that are gonna sell. Everyone wants the photo of him under Queensbridge. Like that's so cool in '92. Like that's what people want. And Kanye in like a bear suit that was his first record. Like that's the coolest ever.
It's crazy. And to have those photos. It's just cool.
It's cool. And no one wanted to do that stuff because they're just no names.
Yeah.
And you have to do that stuff.
Yeah.
So
when somebody reaches out to you about a project, who are they usually coming to you? I'm sure it's different every time, but for the most part, are they coming to you and saying like, hey, we've got a budget and this is it? Or is it like, hey, what do you charge? Like, because I think there is an importance there between a lot of times people want to pull a rate and get a number from you. And I definitely remember me being more like, if they've had experience and done video work before, I can be like, well, what's your budget range? Because sometimes they would blow my mind. They'd be like, well, we've got like a $50,000 budget for this. And I'm like, oh shit,
I would have
charged in half.
Right.
Like,
right.
If that.
Right.
There was one time where somebody actually said, we have 35 on the phone. We're like, yeah, so their budget's 35. And then I remember like being like, all right, cool. That sounds great. And then hanging up with them and being like, did they mean 3,500 or 35,000? And like not knowing, and then being like, how do I follow up? And I emailed him and be like, hey, can you just like recap our call and just kind of go over the bullet points with budget and all that stuff? And so then that way I could get it in writing, and it ended up being 35,000. And I was like, because I was like 3,500. I was like, I probably wouldn't do it for that. That would be way too much work.
I could do it,
yeah,
but
could do it. But then I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So I guess like, right, that's important to try to get that out of them. But how do you approach those conversations?
I think if someone came to me and was like, hey, we have a shoot for you in mind, this is what's happening, what's your rate? I usually just say, hey, this is my day rate, and for usage, we'd have to negotiate, but I can work with any budget that you have. So I'll give them the option of, here's what I would offer. If you need to go below that, I'm willing to do it, but you have to let me know and what we can do. And that's kind of how I always approach it. Like I try to, you want to make money. Everyone wants to make money, and you want to make like your art and your time worth it. And if they only have X amount of money when they come back from like what you've given them, then if you want to do it, you just do it. So it does vary. some people are like, hey, I have like $800 for a project. You want to do it? I'm like, and then you have to go in and be like, what is it? What are we doing? What's the
scope? Like, how is it? How many? Yeah, what's the deliverable?
Yeah, which most likely I'll just be like, okay, let's do it, because I like to just keep working.
yeah.
Like, as much as I want to keep making money, but there's also, you just don't know who this person could blow up tomorrow. I don't know.
Yeah, it depends. Like, if the advice that I've been giving is that, like, if you get a project that you're just not excited about, that you're like, I really don't want to do this, then just like triple your rate, quadruple your rate, whatever. Just say a crazy number.
Yeah.
Because, the times that I've done that, most of the time they've actually accepted it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh shit.
Like, I guess I have to do it now.
Yeah. And I guess my rate just went up.
Yeah.
If that's what people are paying me for, it, that becomes my rate.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. I think if you don't want to do it, just, go as high as you want, see what happens.
What else have you learned about freelancing over the past couple months?
I mean, the biggest thing is just getting relationships and making sure that you meet as many people as possible, and going to show. I mean, as a music person, I go to shows. I go to, any event that I possibly can go to. I'm just trying to meet everybody. And there's like photo expos that happen. There's one in Palm Springs that I need to start going to. Meeting photo editors, meeting other photographers, meeting brands, meeting anybody that you possibly can. I think that's the most important thing as a freelancer, to just grow your network.
Are you naturally good at that, like the networking stuff, or is that something you have to kind of push yourself into? Like, say, like you go to you go to a party or an art gallery or exhibit. Like, are you naturally one to just spark up conversation with people?
Yeah. I think I'm pretty good at it. I like to say that I'm like, for some reason, everyone says that I have a face that people want to talk to, which is really weird.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh,
it's that Quintan's gene.
Yeah, right. It's just kind of funny. They're like, you have like this approachable face. Yeah. I think certain people.
It's probably like a demeanor too, like being welcoming and not, having resting bitch face.
Yeah.
Where people are like turned off.
I might smile too much sometimes.
Right.
And I think people like that, and I would say naturally good at it, depending on the situation. Sometimes I'm like, I don't feel like talking to somebody now.
Like you hop in an Uber and you're like, I just want to close my eyes. And
like stuff like that. I can't. No, I'll be like, I don't want to do that. But it just depends. I think a lot of the time I'm pretty good at it.
Yeah.
So.
I feel like because I don't know, I probably lean more towards being shy when I'm out in public.
Yeah.
And it's like, for me, and even doing like the hustle that you've been doing, where it's like reaching out to all these different people and trying to build these relationships, it's like it's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, when you're not doing that, like, you have to really step it up and like have your work speak for itself in a way. But I feel like you have both of those, which is just a killer combination. Like your work is amazing, but then also like to have that hustle and that drive to be able to go out and like reach out to like 200 people to try to get projects is like,
I'll go on like a DM tear. Like I'll sit on my Instagram and just be like, hey, we should get a shoot together. We should do this. We should do that. And some people get back to you, some people don't, but most of the time it works.
Yeah. I had Dylan Schwartz, who's like he's got a really great Instagram, like really beautiful photos. He's an LA photographer here. And he was saying that was like the biggest thing for him. It was like the new cold calling was just DMing people and brands on Instagram, because like he has a big following. He has like his portfolio is there. Yeah. So that's like the best way to just reach out to somebody, as opposed to sending an email and then they have to click through to your work. Generally, if people get a message from you, on a DM from you on Instagram, and it's interesting enough to read, they'll probably click on your profile and say, oh, what's this guy about? And you're like, oh, he's done some pretty dope shit.
Yeah. And I do it with like record label people or people that are art directors, or not just artists, or not just people. Like I'm looking everywhere. If there's someone that could potentially get me anything, I'm going to DM him, see what happens. So,
how do you find these people? Because that's been one thing with the podcast, is like trying to find new guests for the show and trying to find interesting people to interview. And it's certainly location based. Like I want people that are in LA or in LA often. It's like, how would you go about finding those kinds of people? Like, is it, like, how would you, like, say if you're on Instagram, like where do you go to try to find these people?
I literally will go on the website. Let's say I went on Interscope's website and look who the creative directors are, if I can find them. Yeah. I will look at LinkedIn. I'll look at all these places, and then I'll just look for their name on Instagram and try to find them. Most of the time it's pretty easy to, search Dan Prakopcyk and my Instagram will come up. But that's how I was doing it. I was just researching. I literally would just sit in front of my computer and research, and I'll make a note and I'll put in all these things. Yeah. I'll make sure that I have them all together, and then I'll have different notes. I'd use notes all the time, which is kind of unorganized, but
yeah, notes is like, I use notes too on my iPhone and like my desktop, but it's like, it's hard to organize it.
It's so unorganized.
Yeah.
There's a there's a Google Note thing now that someone just turned me on to. And
is there?
They just don't have a good enough app yet. Once they do, I think it'll work.
I got to check that out. I mean, because there was Evernote, but I felt like Evernote was almost too complicated.
Yeah. I'm like, it's too much for me.
Yeah. It is so hard. I mean, you have to rely with notes. You just have to rely on the search function and your memory to be able to recall, like, all right, did I put in this keyword in this? And like, that's the easiest way to stay organized.
I always like put this top in all caps, like photo inspiration websites, or, people that I need to hit up, or people like I put it in all caps so I could just scroll through and look through it.
Yeah.
But I'm doing so much research. I'm trying to find anybody that I can and just hit up, and, artists that I like, or I sit and listen to Sirius radio all the time when I'm in the car. And I think that'll help me find different artists. I'm like, oh, this guy's super cool. I would love to shoot this person. That's really it. It's a lot of research.
Are you pretty well organized with like both that part of the hustle as well as like the photos that you edit? Or like if you looked at your desktop, would it just be crazy?
That's the most stressful thing in the world to me. If I ever see like screenshots or whatever on my desktop, they have to go into a folder. I'm organized when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah.
My archive is all organized, all by date, and all, but like I need to make sure that stuff is organized. Or like I'm kind of OCD when it comes to stuff like that, which is good.
It's great.
I can't stand like all my Dropbox is completely organized. Like literally.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's all by date. It's all by year.
Does it ever get out of organization, or are you always on top of it?
It won't.
Damn it, that's great. I gotta do that because like I'm the person that's like once a month or every couple of months I'll go in and reorganize everything and sort it. But I feel like I just need to set up a system that I stick to.
Yeah,
because it's so frustrating.
So frustrating.
Like, where was this? And just to have all these. Dude, my girlfriend's her desktop is terrifying. She has so many things on. You're like getting stressed out even hearing this, but like so many icons that the icons overlap each other.
Oh my God, that's like, and then they go to the Finder to find everything. You're like, why are you doing that?
Yeah. Oh, it's nuts. I try to stay pretty organized with it. And like, dude, especially when you're working on a project, it's like to be able to know where it is and to be able to have like separate folders for different like parts of the project. Like now, even like with this, I'll do like headshots afterwards and some behind the scenes headshots, and making sure each one is nested in a different folder. Because when you go back to it, you just want to make sure it's there every time.
Exactly. I think so. Danny had an archivist and basically an organizer for his whole archive when I was there, and she would literally make sure, she's like, you have to do this, or like 10 years down the road, if you don't have things where you want it to be, it's a pain in the ass to find. Like Danny was like, oh, I need to find a photo from 1992 where I was out with somebody, and you're like, where was it? Like there's folders and folders, and like he started like not sure how to organize things, and she had to come in and like reorganize everything. So she kind of embedded in my mind, like, do it by date, do it by this, and you'll have everything organized for the rest of your life. And that's invaluable stuff to.
So how is that organized actually? Like if you were like folder to subfolder dates, like how does that work?
I just go by year, and then I go by date. So I'll do like, what's today? What is today? 11th? 12th?
April 12th.
12th. So I would just do 04, or I'd do 1804 11 dash Matt Devel. Like that's what I would put.
Oh, and then the person's name or the
brand, whatever it is.
Because then that way, if you work with Adidas twice, then you have
different days. Day 1, day 2, I'll put in, or if it's a bigger shoot and stuff like that. And
that's like in the primary, so on hard drive.
Yeah.
So that's in the primary, like the first thing you open up is just all these dates.
I do it by. I'll make sure I do it by year, because it just makes it easier.
Okay, year first. And then you go into 2018, and then you go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you have a backup system that you use?
Yeah, it's tough with video. I feel like with photos, you could probably just replicate a drive.
Yeah, well, I have a Drobo, and I've been working with them, and they're awesome.
What's that?
Basically, it's like a cloud, and I have like think it's like 64 gigs or terabytes. Sorry, 64 terabytes in this bay, and I just stick in different hard drives, and
it's a physical.
It's a physical thing, but what it does is it free floats around all of them. So if one drive fails, you have enough space on all 4 drives that all your stuff is still there. So it's just
kind of like RAID, but it seems like a little bit different.
Yeah, and they're great. I've been like
Drobo.
Not to be an ambassador, but that's what I do with them. And
this podcast is brought to you by
yeah,
Drobo.
right. But they're awesome, and I love them. Some people don't like them, some people do, and I think for me it's perfect.
Yeah.
And then I have 2, so I'll have one that has this is the backup, and this is the one that I work off of.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have
you can see mine back there. I just have the G drives.
Yeah. And then I have like 1,000 like lacy drives that I just roll
right.
around with.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, oh my god, which I have to like put labels on. I have like, here's John Brazil, John Albany, John whatever. Like I have to label everything because then I'll just I hate plugging them in and trying to figure out.
Oh, that's the worst. What I do to remedy that is I put like A1, A2, A3, A4 for all my primary drives, and my backups are B1, B2, B3, B4, and they're a little bit, they're not like exact replicas because my primary drives are like sometimes 10 terabyte, 16 terabyte drives.
Yeah.
And my backup drives are like 2 or 4 terabyte Western Digital. It's like cheaper drives that are smaller. And then I have a spreadsheet. So then if I ever if my client comes back to me from 4 years ago and says, hey, do you have these files? And I can just go into the spreadsheet and then search for it. That has helped me a lot.
That's a good idea.
But as the file sizes get bigger, and I've got a red now, like 8K, and it's like, fuck.
You have to have a drive for every job.
For every job, pretty much.
Every job.
Because it's that, the file sizes are that big, and like the backing up of it is like...
It's even worse.
It's so fucking... I mean, it's. I think we're at the point now where it's just like, obviously the drive space keeps getting bigger, but at the same time, the... Ks keep getting big, like 4K, 8K, 52 megapixel. Like it's happening at the same rate where I feel like
it's crazy.
It's just too much.
Even these guys, like you get to the A7 R2, like those files are so big. I was shooting at a concert. I'm like, sometimes they have to buffer a little bit if you shoot too much.
Dude, are you kidding? Like, yeah. Oh, but when you're actually shooting, it
like,
takes a minute.
Like, all right, wait, click, click, and I felt like I would miss things, but I didn't like. I don't know.
Yeah, even if you want to quick preview it on your computer, it's like 5 seconds to load the damn photo. The A7R, man, the files are so big.
They're too big. They're not too big, but I shoot with Canon, so.
Do you?
And Leicas.
How big are those? Like the actual file size?
I can't remember. I mean, it's 26 megapixel camera, the 1DX, but they're like bigger pixels, so I forget what the megapixels are, or the megabyte on the whatever. But yeah, it's cool. I like it.
Yeah, I started with Canon.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, Sony came through with these, which is, I like the...
For video, they're so much better.
Yeah, so small, compact. I feel like Canon just didn't keep up quite as much. I mean, the quality is still great. Like, I think if you look side by side...
Yeah, but if like the 1DX had the video style of the C500 or whatever they had, like... That's the thing. They don't have the logs that are right, like the city logs and all that stuff. Yeah, which is so stupid.
Yeah,
but they do it on purpose. So
the weirdest thing is like the tax laws, because they can't record over 12 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever. Like these, I had to put in a hack on these cameras so then they can record more than 15 minutes.
Really?
Yeah, because I think it's I'm pretty certain. Like I looked it up. I think it used to be because they would overheat, or less. That's what I thought. Yeah, but I don't think that's the reason. I think it's like, I looked it up online, and it's like European tax code is that if it's more than 12 or 15 minutes, then it's considered a film camera, and film cameras are sold charged at a higher tax rate.
Huh?
Yeah, I'm almost certain that's it, because it's not, these cameras, like,
they're fine.
They're actually not hot at all.
I don't think I've ever had.
It's not recording, but
yeah, like, oh
no, it's not. These don't get hot at all. 4K will. 4K will like if you're shooting in 4K. I wish I could shoot these in 4K. That'd be dope. Yeah, it would be a ton of file space. But yeah, it's just one of those things that you gotta think about. Let us do. You want to do quick questions?
Yeah, go.
All right, cool. Quick questions, not quick answers, unless you want them to be quick.
Yeah.
And then we'll wrap up the podcast.
Cool.
You read a lot?
Yeah.
What's the book that's had the biggest impact or has been most relevant to your work?
Most relevant to my work?
Yeah, I don't know why I said that's not the way that question goes. Yeah, what's the book that's had the biggest impact on your life? That's like inspired you the most?
I mean, I love the Keith Richards book, but I don't think that's inspiring.
What was that called? Life?
I just remember him. He's got it's the black and white photo on the front. I'm a photo guy, so I'm like, I can't remember what
that's what it's based on.
No,
Dude, I remember reading that book.
It's so good.
Yeah, it was
autobiography,
kind of enlightening.
Yeah,
and I didn't know anything about.
I had no idea either.
Yeah,
the Questlove book I love. I can never remember the name of it, but it was,
you see the photo in your head. Though.
Yeah, I know exactly what it looks like. I'm trying to think what else.
What is it about those kind of the biographies?
I really enjoy learning about music history, and I think Questlove has such a good insight on how he started and what music he was listening to, and how that shaped the roots and shaped everything. And I'm so interested in that kind of stuff.
Wasn't he on like South Street just drumming like on garbage cans and
shit?
He
just like he was a tour drummer so early, like when he was like 12 or something like that, with his parents. His dad was doing stuff, and he literally just has all this music knowledge. And then like the Prince stories are hilarious, about like him and Prince going roller skating and all this kind of stuff. It's hysterical. But I just like the music history stuff. I think that's interesting to me. I started Neil Young's book, and that's so cool to know how Buffalo Springfield started. Like Stephen Stills moved to LA, they met, and then Neil moved back to Canada and was like, oh my God, I think I just passed up on a big opportunity. I'm going to go back to LA, try to find Stephen Stills. Couldn't find him, went everywhere in the world, or in LA. In the 70s, you didn't have anywhere to figure out where anybody was. And he's like physically going to like clubs and stuff. Couldn't find him. He's like, well, I guess I messed up. Got in the car, started driving to Canada, sitting on the traffic in like the 101 or something, and Steven was behind him on the 101 and was like, yo, like, where have you been? Like, got out of his car, was like, Neil.
What? And
they were like, oh my God. And they started Buffalo Springfield.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's so cool to me.
I love that
kind of stuff. So that's mostly what I read.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing with the Stones. I think they met on like a subway platform or a train platform or something. It's just insane. So random.
Yeah,
and just timing of it. Yeah, I love that too. That's why I like this podcast too. It's just kind of hearing how people got into something or started, or how those opportunities came about. Because it's like, I think there's an element of like just hard work, grind, and just busting your ass, and then a little bit of luck. There's just these serendipitous moments where you're like, that worked out so well.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because when I was first starting, I went out to San Francisco to shoot Rock the Bells. And
you shot Rock the Bells?
Yeah.
When was this?
2012, maybe.
Dude,
San Francisco, way
2012. No, I did Rock the Bells. This was one of my first paid shoot ever. I got flown out to Rock the Bells in Colorado, and I shot like Nas, Mos Def, and Talib Kweli. Yeah, it was like when they first came back.
Yeah.
What was they had a group,
like,
Black Thought?
Yeah.
No, it wasn't Black Thought. It was Black something.
Oh my God. It's going to kill me now.
Yeah. But they had like a reunion where like it was the first time they came back together, and I was like in the front row, like in front of security, like shooting that, because they were wearing this t-shirt that was that clothing brand that I told you about. And wow, that was a crazy opportunity. But you shot Rock the Bells.
So that
side
was
tangent.
Well, another side tangent. One of my favorite concerts still of all time was in 2007. It was Rock the Bells on Randall's Island, and it was Rage Against the Machine, Public Enemy, Wu-Tang, Cypress Hill. It was the best concert of my life. Like,
That's
I still to this day, I like crowd surf for the first time. It was like the best ever. But where were we? Oh, so Rock the Bells, and I had a car but didn't have a place to stay, and I was like, I'm just gonna go shoot it and see what happens. And I met this guy Grady, who is my buddy, and he is g-eazy's photographer. So back then, g-eazy was nobody. He was I don't even know if he was in the Bay. He might have been in New Orleans. But anyway, he moved back to San Francisco where Grady was, and they became friends. And Grady didn't have a ride home, and I didn't have a place to stay, and we just met in the pit. And he was just like, do you mind giving me a ride home? I was like, if I can crash on your couch. And then we've been friends ever since.
Wow.
And that was like 7 years ago now.
You think about those kind of connections that just, and I think about that too, like just a one or two that I meet that they introduced me to somebody else, and you can see this web, and you're like, holy shit, like, if that didn't happen, my life would be totally different from what it is right now.
And he basically, that's how I met, G, and I saw him do 200 people in basement of Webster Hall, and it was awesome. And that like Maddie, his manager, was super cool, and that's how the John thing came about, because Maddie put me up for going on tour with him, and you just kind of wait, and you keep those relationships just in case there's, not just in case because I like those guys, but you just never know.
Yeah. You never know where it's gonna
who's gonna
end
hit
up.
you up for anything.
Yeah.
And that's why I think relationships are so important. But
Question 2.
Go.
What drives you?
What drives me?
Why do you keep making stuff?
Why do I keep making stuff? I love being an artist and being a photographer and making new stuff and being creative and finding ways to be different and finding ways to just get my art out. And I've been trying to work on personal projects and other stuff, and it just keeps me going. I'm not doing it because I want to be a famous photographer that's, selling his prints for whatever thousands, millions of dollars. I just want to do it because I love doing it. And I've always been the guy that is looking at the pictures and not reading the books most of the time.
Right.
Even though I do read. And it just, visually, I'm just such a visual learner all the time, and I just can't stop. I literally can't stop. It kind of is weird sometimes where I'm like, you need to slow down. Like, my fiance would be like, you need to stop. Like, just take a minute. You're not like, if you don't get a job in 2 days, you're not dying. Like, everything's okay. And I'm like, I need to keep working. I need to keep doing stuff. And I think just being creative is what drives me the most, is having fun making stuff. So
where do you go when you're feeling doubt? When you're feeling like you don't know if things are going to work out?
I try to go to a park somewhere, like a national park. Go up to Yosemite. I'll go out to the beach. I'll go out somewhere that I just don't have cell phone service. And I think most of my doubts are social media influenced, where you're like, wow, this guy's doing this person's doing that, why am I not doing stuff like that, blah, blah, blah. And then you got to get away from it. And that's my, go out to Joshua Tree, go out just somewhere just to get out of anywhere you're at, and it just helps me clear my head. So
what's the simplest advice that's the most important to follow, especially for people just getting started out?
Don't be discouraged if you don't get work in the first 3-4 months / years. You just don't know. Keep going. It's all gonna be, if you have a passion and you just want to do it, keep with it. If you need to find a separate job, or you need to whatever to fund that passion, do it. For me, I was a PA, and that's how I funded living in New York City and still trying to be a photographer. I was, first one there, last one to leave all the time on all these big shoots, and got paid nothing, $200 a day. So just finding a way to fund your passion and keep with it.
2 more questions here.
Go.
What one thing should people read, watch, or listen to before they go to bed tonight?
The Harry Benson documentary. It's awesome. It's one of my favorites. Harry Benson. It's about he was the only tour photographer with the Beatles for the first, and it is so good. He is amazing. He's got the photos of them in the bed, doing the pillow fight, all 4 of them, and shooting on like a Hasselblad with a flash on it, and it's incredible. And he's so amazing, and the documentary was just incredible.
Where's that?
Netflix.
Cool.
Should be. Yeah, it's on Netflix.
Sweet. And last question, where should people find you online?
Instagram.
At
Daniel.
At Daniel. That's it.
Easy.
Simple.
Easy.
Cool, man. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, man. It was awesome.
All right. And that is it for this podcast. How about that? That was cool. It was cool. It's always good to hang out with family, even though you didn't know they were family when you first met them. That was cool. I think we covered a lot on this episode. If you guys want to ask a question, if you want to get on the podcast, again, go to groundupshow.com, and there is a little section there that it's with all my email and contact info if you want to send in a question, or if you just want to say what's up, do that. But if you've been keeping up with some other stuff I've been making, I can't respond to every email. I try my best, but it can be overwhelming, and I'm spending so much time creating this stuff that sometimes you gotta let some of those things slip. The social media replying and all that stuff, I do my best. I read as many as I can just because I truly appreciate the encouragement, the kind words, the questions. All that is amazing, but at the end of the day, I gotta make time to create this stuff, and it takes time to make this stuff. And lastly, if you want to leave a review on iTunes, that's been amazingly helpful for the past couple weeks, and it's been great to see what you guys think of the show. So go to iTunes, leave a rating, leave a review. Every single one helps. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next week.